Daniel Richards was once a name that echoed in every corner of the business world. A self-made billionaire, he had built his empire from the ground up, turning a small tech startup into a global giant. His luxurious mansion, private jets, and flawless reputation were the symbols of his success. But nothing could prepare him for the storm that was about to hit. It all started with a failed investment in a promising new tech company. Daniel, always known for his sharp instincts, had trusted a new venture led by a promising entrepreneur, but the deal turned sour. The company collapsed under the weight of bad management, and with it, Daniel's fortune began to crumble. What followed was a series of financial missteps that triggered a domino effect, wiping out years of hard-earned success. His employees were the first to feel the impact. Layoffs, pay cuts, and closures of several departments quickly followed. The once thriving headquarters now felt like a deserted island, and Daniel could only watch as his empire began to disintegrate. Amid the chaos, the public eye turned on him. Headlines painted him as the man who had lost it all, a cautionary tale for those who dared to dream too big. Daniel retreated into his private world, avoiding the press and canceling meetings with investors. He became a shadow of the man he once was, struggling with the overwhelming pressure of his failure. In the midst of his downward spiral, Daniel's isolation grew. He spent long, lonely nights pacing the cold marble floors of his mansion, staring out the windows at the city he had once conquered. He knew that his reputation was ruined, and he couldn't see a way out of the mess he had created. One rainy afternoon, in the middle of his despair, Daniel decided to take a walk to clear his mind. He donned a plain coat, trying to avoid recognition, and left his mansion behind. As he walked through the crowded streets of the city, his thoughts consumed him. That's when he saw her. A homeless woman sat on the corner of a busy intersection, her face worn by time and hardship. She held a sign that read, "Anything helps, even a smile." Her clothes were tattered, her hair unkempt, but there was something in her eyes that stopped Daniel in his tracks. It wasn't pity or sadness. It was a quiet strength, a peaceful resolve that made him pause. She smiled at him as he walked by, and for reasons he couldn't explain, Daniel felt an odd connection. In a moment of weakness, he stopped. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice softer than he intended. She looked up at him with a calm expression. "I'm fine," she said, her voice steady despite her circumstances. "But you, on the other hand, don't look so well." Daniel froze. She was right. He hadn't realized how much he had been struggling, how the weight of his failure was beginning to crush him. But it wasn't just her words, it was the way she said it, with a sense of understanding that struck him to his core. "I've lost everything," Daniel confessed, his voice breaking slightly. "I don't know how to fix it." The woman regarded him thoughtfully for a moment. Then, without a word, she reached into a small bag beside her and pulled out a weathered notebook. She handed it to him with a quiet smile. "Start by writing down what you still have," she said. Daniel took the notebook, confused but intrigued. "What does this mean?" "Right," she repeated softly, "and you'll find the answer." As Daniel walked away, the rain began to fall harder, but his mind was spinning. What did she mean? What could he possibly have left? He couldn't explain it, but something about her simple gesture had sparked a glimmer of hope in him that he hadn't felt in months. Little did he know, this encounter with the homeless woman would mark the beginning of a series of events that would not only restore his fortune but also change his life in ways he never expected. The days following his encounter with the homeless woman were a blur for Daniel. He couldn't stop thinking about her words or the strange calmness in her eyes. He sat in his office, looking at the notebook she had handed him, but couldn't bring himself to open it. What could a simple notebook possibly do to help him? Yet, he felt an inexplicable pull to it. One evening, After another fruitless day of trying to fix the mess his business had become, Daniel finally decided to open the notebook. The first page was blank, save for a single sentence written at the top. What do you still have? It was a simple question, but in that moment, it felt like a heavy weight pressing on his chest. He thought about his mansion, now largely empty, and his once thriving company, now reduced to a skeleton crew. He thought about his friends who had distanced themselves, not wanting to be associated with someone who had lost it all. He thought about his parents, who had always hoped he would succeed, and how he felt like he had let them down. But then, something inside him shifted. He thought of his health, which, despite the stress, was still intact. He thought of the few loyal employees who hadn't abandoned him. He thought of the rare moments of peace he had found during his walks, especially that rainy day when he met her. He began to write, "I still have my health. I still have a few loyal people in my life. I still have the will to keep going." As he wrote, a sense of clarity began to wash over him. The simple act of acknowledging what he still had made him realize something important. He wasn't as broken as he had thought. Yes, his financial empire had collapsed, but there was more to life than money. He still had the chance to rebuild, to redefine success in his own way. The next morning, Daniel went for another walk. He wasn't sure why, but something told him that he needed to find that woman again. He retraced his steps from the previous day, walking through the crowded streets, looking for her. After an hour of searching, he finally spotted her on the same corner, holding her sign. This time, Daniel didn't just pass by. He stopped and sat down beside her, unsure of what to say. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, the woman looked at him with a knowing smile. "You've been thinking," she said, her voice still calm and steady. "You've realized that you still have a choice." Daniel nodded, surprised at how accurately she had read him.
I have.
"But I'm not sure what to do with it." She looked at him for a moment, her eyes soft but piercing. "You have something that most people don't understand. You have the experience to rebuild. Not everyone is given that opportunity, but you've learned from your failures. Now, the next step is to help others." "Help others?" Daniel repeated, confused. She nodded. "When you help others, you help yourself. If you want to rebuild, don't just think of yourself. Think about the people around you who are struggling, the ones who need guidance. If you lift them up, they'll help you rise as well." Daniel sat there, contemplating her words. The idea of helping others seemed so far from where he was right now. How could he offer help when he was still trying to save himself? But something in her words resonated deeply with him. She was right about one thing he had experience, and it wasn't just in making money, it was in overcoming obstacles. Before he could respond, the woman reached into her bag again and pulled out a crumpled envelope. She handed it to him without saying a word. "Take this," she said, "and remember what I told you." Daniel hesitated, but something told him to trust her. He took the envelope and opened it. Inside was a business card, simple and unadorned, with only a phone number written on it. "What's this?" Daniel asked, his brow furrowed. She smiled again, a knowing smile that seemed to carry more weight than her words. "Call it when you're ready to change your life." With that, she stood up and walked away, disappearing into the crowd as if she had never been there at all. Daniel stared at the card in his hand, the weight of her words settling deep within him. He didn't fully understand it, but he felt an undeniable urge to follow through. For the first time in months, he had a spark of hope. Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that his life was on the verge of a major shift. After the mysterious encounter with the woman, he spent the next few days in a state of contemplation, constantly thinking about her words. Help others. Rebuild through service. He wasn't sure what it meant or how it could apply to him, but he felt an undeniable pull to do something different. One evening, Unable to ignore the gnawing curiosity, he finally dialed the number on the card. His heart raced as the phone rang, and after a few tense moments, a calm voice answered. "Hello, Daniel." The woman's voice was unmistakable. "How did you know it was me?" Daniel asked, bewildered. She chuckled softly. "I knew you'd call when the time was right. And I knew you'd need guidance. Sometimes we just need a little nudge." Daniel was silent for a moment, trying to process everything. "What exactly is it you want me to do?" "You've been successful before because you understood people, what they need, how to solve problems," she explained. "But success isn't just about money, Daniel. It's about impact. It's about creating something that lasts, something that changes lives." Daniel felt a surge of realization. "So, you want me to help people, right? Like what you suggested on the street?" "Yes," she replied. "But not in the way you think. You have the knowledge, the connections, and the resources to help others build their own dreams. There are people who need the same kind of guidance you once received, but they don't have the means. You can provide that. And in return, you'll rebuild your own life, not just with wealth, but with purpose." A weight seemed to lift from Daniel's chest. For the first time since everything fell apart, he felt clarity. He wasn't just some failed businessman. He was someone who could help others avoid the same mistakes he made. And by doing so, he could rebuild something even more valuable than before. "Okay," he said, his voice steady with newfound determination. "I'll do it." The woman paused. "Good. There's a group of young entrepreneurs I know, struggling to get their projects off the ground. They need mentorship, guidance, and resources, things you can provide. I want you to meet them. They'll be waiting for you." Daniel felt a renewed sense of purpose. The first step had been taken, but he knew it wouldn't be easy. Helping others meant stepping outside of his comfort zone, away from his previous life of luxury and isolation. But he was ready. The next day, Daniel arrived at a modest co-working space in the city. He walked in to find a group of young people gathered around a table, some of them working on laptops, others scribbling notes on paper. They looked up as he entered, their faces a mix of curiosity and nervousness. "Hi," Daniel said, his voice carrying an air of quiet authority. "I'm Daniel Richards." They introduced themselves, and he quickly realized they were passionate but lacked direction. Some had good ideas, others had potential, but none of them knew how to navigate the business world. For hours, Daniel sat with them, offering advice, sharing his experiences, and providing the kind of insight that only someone who had been to the top and back could give. He didn't just talk about the mistakes he had made. He shared how those failures had taught him valuable lessons that he was now eager to pass on. As the day wore on, something remarkable happened. The young entrepreneurs began to trust him. They began to open up about their challenges and dreams, and Daniel helped them strategize ways to move forward. It wasn't just about business. It was about the relationships they built, the trust that grew in a room, and the sense of camaraderie that started to form. When the day ended, Daniel stood up to leave, but before he could go, one of the young entrepreneurs, a woman named Maya, walked up to him. "Thank you," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. "You don't know how much this means to us. You've given us more than advice. You've given us hope." Daniel smiled, feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time, satisfaction. "You all have the potential to change the world," he said. "Just remember, it's not about how fast you go. It's about making sure you keep moving forward, no matter how hard it gets." As he left the co-working space, the weight on his shoulders felt lighter. He had helped others, just as the woman had suggested. And in doing so, he had found a renewed sense of purpose. His life wasn't about the money anymore. It was about the impact he could have, the lives he could touch, and the legacy he could leave behind. Little did Daniel know, this was just the beginning of his journey. Over the next few months, he mentored more young entrepreneurs, helping them find their footing and guiding them through their struggles. Word spread about his newfound mission, and soon he was contacted by organizations, investors, and philanthropists who saw his passion for giving back. Daniel's business empire slowly began to rebuild, not just through traditional investments, but through a new venture focused on mentoring and supporting other entrepreneurs. He had found a way to combine his wealth of experience with his desire to help others. And through it all, he never saw the homeless woman again. But every time he helped someone else rise, he remembered her words, and he knew that, in some way, she was still guiding him. The story ends with Daniel on a new path, one where his success was measured not by his wealth, but by the difference he made in the lives of others.